Hey, everybody, welcome back. Today, we are going to talk in depth about the money monsters for Enneagram Type 1. I call them the Pious and the Prude. But as always, if you don't know your Enneagram type, if there's I'll put a link up here to the IEQ9 Integrative Enneagram Test, which is if you follow this code, I get a little kickback if you take the test through my link. That'd be a great way to support me in this channel. And also, exciting news, my new book, Taming Your Money Monster, 9 Paths to Money Mastery with the Enneagram, is now out and available this week. It launched Tuesday. So please pick up a copy. And if you want to support me in this channel, buy the book. And most importantly, if you could write a review on Amazon or Goodreads, that would be a huge favor. Okay, let's jump into it. So type 1s. Type 1s they have what I call a sacred wound of internalized anger, meaning as a child, their psychological umbilical cord was cut by anger that they've internalized towards themselves, creating their greatest fear of being bad or defective. They may have grown up in very rigid households where there was a strong sort of morality codes, or they were maybe put in a position of taking care of their siblings, always being told to be a good boy or a good girl. They always got pat in the heads for being the perfect child. And that created a lot of internal pressure on them to live up to that impossibly high standard. And they're always trying to either improve themselves, improve others, or improve the macro level systems around them. And that really, where you put your focus as a 1 really depends on your instinctual variant type, which I didn't have time to cover in this book, but it will be in my next book. Those lend some nuance and flavor to how your Enneagram type presents itself. But generally, 1s have this strong inner critic. It's like a drill sergeant in their head telling them to shape up and be better and do it right, do things the right way. And they get really upset at themselves when they can't live up to these impossibly high standards, which kind of comes out as resentment towards themselves or others or their situation. So they carry a very heavy burden, type 1s. But when it comes to money, there's 2 unhealthy dynamics that can present themselves. One is, this is called what I call the attachment theory of money, where you can be either anxiously attached to money, you're too focused on it, you're too obsessed about it, and I call that the pious. Or if you're push money away, you can be what I call money avoidant. Then you become the prude, and we can be prudish about your finances. And we're going to go into both of those traits. We're going to go into depth on some of the traits for type 1 and how they relate to money. But what they really need to work on is they have this deep anger at themselves, again, when things aren't done right. And they're trying not to trigger that inner drill sergeant, because when it does, it doesn't feel good. So they're always trying to do it the right way. But when it comes to money, let's just talk about the prude. So when a type 1 is maybe financially illiterate, or they're not very good at dealing with money, they have this avoidant reaction to it in some way, shape, or form. Oh, and let me just add a caveat here. You can be anxious in some areas of your financial life and avoidant in others. So there's what I call the 4 pillars of finance, which are earning, saving, investing, and giving. Earning, saving, investing, and giving. So you could be anxious in one of those areas, but avoidant in another. So it's sort of a mix and match for most people, but probably more one type than the other. But for 1, since 1 needs to be good and perfect at everything they do, if they're not good at dealing with money, every time they open their wallet, it would trigger their resentment. It would trigger negative emotions for them. So instead, what they do is they demonize money instead. And so, like, pushing money away or avoiding it is the perfect way to deal with something that's inherently bad or evil or defective. So money becomes the villain in the morality play here for the pious. And so that makes pushing money away, if they have this sort of weird psychological, philosophical justification for their money avoidance, because they think money's bad, and the perfect way to deal with something that's bad is to keep it at arm's length. And so what that comes up with is it can lead to a lot of obviously financial problems for the prude down the road. And here are some of the traits. Let me just walk you through a couple of the traits of the prude and see if any of these resonate with you. And of course, with all the Enneagram descriptions I'm covering in these videos, I'm sometimes stretching these traits to cartoonish proportions to kind of make a point and partly for laughs. So maybe not all of these traits may not fit you, but maybe one or two, you'll find something that maybe resonates with you. So for the first trait of the Prude, I call it the Abundance Allergy. They tend to treat abundance like it's radioactive, and they can break out in hives at the thought of having more than they need. And they have a hard time maybe enjoying their success. And so they need to maybe see that, a day spa won't lead to eternal damnation. So you need to be a little more flexible. And then we have what I call the financial fundamentalist syndrome. So these folks have more unbreakable financial rules than a regulatory handbook. They'll put all these they're really, having principles is admirable, but being too rigid can lead out to missed opportunities. So they might need to practice a little financial yoga, learn to be a little more flexible and bend before you break. And it doesn't mean running up credit card debt, but it might mean having an impromptu date night. It's not financial anarchy. It's more like learning how to breathe and stretch out and be a little more flexible. Then there's what I call the voluntary vow of poverty complex. Some prudes turn frugality into an extreme sport, believing if they're not financially suffering, somehow they're sinning or doing something wrong or bad. And while being mindful of your spending is great, this sort of self-imposed austerity can lead to an aversion to earning and saving and investing that you need to have a robust financial life. Then there's what I call the financial Pharisee syndrome. Now, our prudes sometimes can point themselves as the financial morality police, ready to condemn others for enjoying their money. And they might give Jesus tips on how to judge the money changers in the temple. And so instead of criticizing people for their financial decisions, maybe try this. When you feel the urge to critique someone's spending, write down one positive aspect of that financial choice. And it's learning it's a mindfulness practice for financial tolerance is what maybe could be helpful for you. And then for prudes, we've got the financial perfectionism paralysis. Now, some money avoidant ones, they're so concerned about making the perfect financial move that they make no move at all. They're caught like a deer in the headlights, and they get paralyzed by information overload. And they want to make the perfect decision with their money, and they just can't figure out what that is. So they do nothing, and that's often the worst way to go. For some ones, for avoidant ones, they can have what I call the compulsive donation syndrome. They need to while generosity is beautiful, we all need to practice it. Some prudes might give away their last penny to prove they're not attached to money, only to find themselves in a deep bind later. So for those folks, you might want to practice a structured giving plan. It's also called tithing, or you're just taking a percentage of your income, of your savings, or whatever your budget allows, and make a mindful giving plan, but don't feel like you need to give every last penny away just to feel morally perfect and pure. Okay, so for the prudes, kind of the one thing to take away is that, money doesn't make you bad. Money isn't inherently evil, which is what the prude often has this mindset that they need to get out of. And so, but, being a sanctimonious pain in the wallet kind of does make you a difficult person to live with. So learning to be a little more open to abundance and being a little more flexible with your rules and learning to have a little more gratitude for what you have and for what could be possible. Okay, so then I'll go over how to overcome these a little bit at the end of the video. But then we've got the pious. This is the money anxious one. So the pious one is often in good financial shape, but they're just maybe a little too exceptionally good with their money. They're so controlling and tight-fisted with it and excellent with it that there's this sort of nonstop commentary of self-judgment thoughts and resentments, critiques about their finances that can come up. And while the pious ones, they make excellent CFOs, accountants, and sort of bean counters in general. But if you force them to deviate from their perfectly crafted budget, beware, the resentment can come pouring out. And so, I once worked at a company where the business manager was a pious one, and I had to fill out the same reimbursement form 3 different times for a lousy $7.50 because the staple wasn't in the exact perfect spot. Like the staple had to be right there, or he wouldn't accept the form. Not sideways, not down here, not over there. It's like right in the corner, horizontal, and it was that kind of neurotic compulsiveness can really cause all kinds of problems in your business and your personal life. Okay, so here are some traits of the pious. The first one I call is perfection paranoia. They'll balance their checkbook like they're walking over a tightrope across Niagara Falls. And they're just, in a sense, constantly worry about making mistakes or falling short of their own high standards. It also can lead to what I call control freak fever. They guard their money with the intensity of a squirrel guarding its last acorn in winter. And then they feel it's their moral duty to police everyone else's wallets too. So boardrooms and family budget meetings are sort of 10% discussion and about 90% Spanish Inquisition. So you need to maybe learn to let go a little bit of your impossibly high standards for yourself and for others. So you're not creating a lot of stress that's then going to create more resentment and more problems and cause things to blow up. They often have what I call fiscal flogging. When they make mistakes, they kind of flog themselves and beat themselves up mercilessly. And they may have a more think about more of a good enough approach to your budget and to your finances, without all the self-mortification and self-judgment, and maybe create a financial forgiveness ritual for yourself where you write down your money mistakes on a piece of paper and then maybe dramatically burn it, or have some sort of forgiveness ritual for yourself to let go of some of the impossibly high standards. Another trait of the pious is what I call keeping up with the Loneses. They're always looking over the fence at their neighbor's yard and thinking the grass is greener and better fertilized, when it's probably just AstroTurf financed at 29% interest rate. So that comparison, the ones feel like that they're not keeping up, they're not good enough. That comparison to others can really get them on this treadmill that they can't get themselves off of anxiety around their finances and more, and it can really decimate their personal happiness. And then we've got killjoy accounting. Some folks, so these pious, they're so busy and responsible that they forget that money can buy happiness. It's called ice cream, right? So maybe learning to let go of the impossible, the rigid budget, and learning to treat money as a spiritual practice. And you maybe even have a small, fun fund or something for that you're able to go on an impromptu date night with your spouse. Do things using your wealth for others in service to make the world a better place. And you can use your strong perfectionism skills. Can also, when you channel them in a healthy way, you can really make a positive difference in the world. But you need to learn how to perfect the world around you without the resentment, without the anger, with more serenity and more gratitude. And then we've also got the budget obsession disorder. These accountants' budgets can have more categories than an Amazon drop-down menu. They get so meticulous about their budget, it can become a real obsession. Maybe try to simplify your accounting a little bit. You want to be prudent and you want to be responsible, but maybe sometimes that sense of responsibility can be a little too much. And then we've got the coupon crusader complex. They're convinced that their financial ruin lurks behind every unclipped coupon or unnegotiated bill. Sometimes they'll drive 50 miles to save a nickel on gas, and realizing that there was an opportunity cost to all of that budget obsession, right? Maybe you'd be better off just staying home watching some financial YouTube videos. Save yourself money that way. Then we've got lastly, we have the monetary messiah complex. The pious, they can preach the gospel of fiscal responsibility with more zeal than a televangelist. Maybe one thing you can do is once a week, if you're a pious, try confessing one financial mistake that you've made in your life to somebody and what you learned from it, learning to be a little bit more humble around it. One of my friends who's a very accomplished but very pious type 1, he often prays every day for a daily humiliation, right? And it says keep him humble and to sort of intentionally looking forward to that being that his perfectionism being triggered, so we can learn to be more grateful for the blessings that he has in his life. Okay, so if you want to learn how to become a money master, how to overcome these, just a quick tip, I'll tell you the first thing you need to do is practice gratitude, whether you're a pious or a prude. That's your primary recovery virtue that will help you overcome the resentment that comes about when things aren't done perfectly all the time. Try to have a gratitude journal, can be very helpful. And then also practicing mindfulness, like being in the present moment and being grateful for what you have. And that leads to the greatest virtue for a type 1, which is serenity. That's their greatest virtue when they're at their highest, when they're in their best self, according to their Enneagram type. And how do you do that? How do you get there? Well, check out my book, of course, Taming Your Money Monster. Oops, upside down. It's now available, as I said, from booksellers everywhere. It'll give you really detailed step-by-step instructions on how to tame your money monsters. And as always, if you like these videos, please remember to like, share, and subscribe. It's a great way to support this work and support this channel. As always, take care. And next video, we're going to talk about the Enneagram Type 2, the helper, and all of their money monsters. So talk soon.